Do you know how people cut the hardest material in the world, diamond? Or why is urine yellow? And what exactly is wind illness, a common condition in traditional belief? What does it mean in modern science? In Vietnamese folk beliefs, wind illness refers to being affected by what is known as toxic wind, believed to enter the body and cause fatigue, chills, headaches, nausea, stomachaches, aching limbs, and more. To treat this, a method called scraping therapy, also known as coining, is often used. To perform scraping therapy, people use the edge of smooth, rounded objects, such as a spoon, coin, porcelain bowl or dish, the spine of a comb, silver ring, silver necklace, or buffalo horn to scrape along specific areas of the body, most commonly along both sides of the spine. If we interpret wind illness as purely being caused by toxic wind entering the body, we must first define what toxic wind actually is. It's not some dangerous gas released by a supervillain from a skyscraper to harm others, nor does it have to be a literal gust of wind. Based on our research, toxic wind is a general term for various weather conditions that can lead to symptoms associated with wind illness. It could be wind, heat, cold, frost, rain, or seasonal transitions from hot to cold or vice versa. For instance, if you're walking outside and suddenly feel dizzy, faint, and collapse, that's considered wind illness. In reality, wind illness is a general term in traditional Eastern medicine referring to a group of conditions known as weather-related illnesses, those caused by climatic and environmental factors. Perhaps because most weather patterns involve some form of wind, people have commonly referred to all such conditions as wind illness rather than sunstroke or rain sickness. The word illness implies a sudden, unexpected onset of symptoms, and as discussed earlier, wind doesn't necessarily refer to literal wind. Therefore, wind illness does not strictly mean being hit by an actual gust of wind. According to a well-known associate professor, a person can only be truly diagnosed with wind illness if they are able to recover and return to normal health after experiencing the symptoms. If the aftermath leaves long-term effects, it is no longer wind illness but should be identified as a more serious medical condition, such as a stroke or cerebrovascular accident. This means that when someone like Mr. A or Mrs. B collapses and dies, and people say they died from wind illness, it's most likely not the case. The victim may have suffered from a serious underlying condition that caused fainting, high fever, and eventually brain damage or death. Returning to scraping therapy, even though there hasn't been extensive scientific research fully evaluating its efficacy, its continued use and popularity suggest it provides real benefits to people suffering from wind illness. Essentially, scraping therapy is a method of applying external force to stimulate the autonomic nervous system, which includes many nerves aligned along the spine, thereby helping to improve blood circulation. According to Associate Professor Dr. Nguyen Thir Bay, scraping is a traditional healing technique that modern science also holds in high regard. However, this technique can backfire if performed improperly, such as applying too much pressure or using objects that are too hard or sharp, which can damage the skin and blood vessels. Many people believe that scraping must be forceful and leave dark bruises for the toxic wind to be released. Whether or not any toxic wind is expelled is debatable, but overly intense scraping will definitely cause bleeding first. The dark bruises left after scraping therapy are essentially subcutaneous hemorrhages caused by damaged capillaries. On the topic of blood, many believe that when one has wind illness, it's necessary to perform bloodletting using sharp objects to pierce the skin so that the bad blood can flow out. Sometimes this is done in combination with fire cupping, placing a suction cup over the bleeding spot to draw out more bad blood. This belief stems from the observation that the extracted blood appears dark red or purplish. In reality, that's not due to toxins, but simply because it's venous blood, which always appears darker than arterial blood due to lower oxygen content. Venous blood is dark whether you've caught wind or not. Additionally, the use of unsterilized instruments during bloodletting or scraping therapy can pose serious health risks. When the skin is broken even slightly, there is a potential entry point for harmful bacteria and viruses. Without proper sterilization, tools may carry pathogens from previous use or from the environment, leading to skin infections, bloodborne illnesses, or even systemic infections if left untreated. This is especially dangerous in settings where hygiene protocols are not strictly followed, making a simple, traditional treatment potentially hazardous. Another commonly discussed phenomenon surrounding scraping therapy is the change in the color of silver jewelry, such as rings or necklaces during or after treatment. Some traditional beliefs attribute this discoloration, particularly the jewelry turning black, to a concept known as toxic wind, leaving the body. According to this belief, the silver reacts with the toxins released through the skin during the scraping process, thus turning dark as a sign of illness being expelled. However, from a scientific perspective, the explanation is quite different and rooted in chemistry. When a person is unwell, especially during episodes involving fever or inflammation, the body tends to sweat more. Sweat naturally contains various substances, including sulfur-containing compounds such as hydrogen sulfide. Silver reacts with sulfur to form silver sulfidia compound that is black in color. Therefore, when silver jewelry comes into contact with this type of sweat, it can tarnish or blacken not because of toxins, but due to a chemical reaction between silver and sulfur. Moreover, some traditional practitioners of scraping therapy enhance the treatment by incorporating a boiled egg into the process. In this method, the egg is sometimes used to massage or press along the scraped areas of the body. Eggs, especially the yolk, are rich in sulfur. When a silver item is used in conjunction with the egg, the sulfur can transfer to the silver surface, triggering a chemical reaction that causes the metal to turn black. This tarnishing can occur regardless of the patient's health condition, reinforcing the fact that the discoloration is due to chemistry rather than the presence or release of toxic wind. In traditional Eastern medicine, wind illness, often referred to as trung jo in Vietnamese culture, is considered an acute reaction to sudden environmental changes. It typically occurs in individuals with weakened immune systems or imbalances in their bodily functions. Common symptoms may include dizziness, cold sweats, fatigue, chills, and even mild paralysis in extreme cases. These symptoms are believed to result from the invasion of external elements, such as wind or cold, into the body's energy pathways. Scraping therapy, also known as gua sha, is one of the most common traditional treatments used to relieve wind illness. The technique involves firmly scraping the skin, using a tool, often a smooth-edged instrument, to promote blood flow and release stagnant energy. For centuries, it has been widely practiced across various Asian cultures and is particularly valued by elders who rely on time-tested natural remedies. In recent years, modern scientific studies have also begun to recognize the potential benefits of this therapy in terms of improving circulation and reducing inflammation. Nevertheless, it is crucial to acknowledge that while scraping therapy may provide relief for some individuals, it must be performed correctly to avoid adverse outcomes. Improper technique, overuse, or scraping on inappropriate body areas can lead to bruising, skin damage, or even aggravate the underlying condition. More importantly, neglecting hygiene practices such as failing to sterilize the scraping tools can transform a harmless treatment into a source of infection and discomfort. In conclusion, while wind illness and its traditional treatments are deeply rooted in cultural knowledge and practices, they should be approached with care and a balance of tradition and modern understanding. Recognizing the scientific basis behind certain effects, like the tarnishing of silver, does not diminish the value of traditional beliefs, but rather helps bridge the gap between folklore and evidence-based care. Ultimately, when performed thoughtfully and hygienically, scraping therapy remains a respected method of holistic healing.